What happens when a person's life is nearing its end, and they decide they still have much to teach? This is the question that lingers in the air as Mary, an 82-year-old woman, faces her final breath. Her serene gaze, filled with untold stories, reveals a past full of challenges and triumphs. Inside a modest home in a suburb of the United States, Mary's life intertwines with that of her grandson, Jake, a young man struggling to find his place in the world. Mary has always dreamed of leaving a legacy, something that could make a difference in the lives of those around her. However, the last few years have been difficult. Loneliness and frailty have pushed her into a dark corner where the memories of happy days have become a distant shadow. Jake, on the other hand, is navigating his own emotional storms. He feels the pressure to succeed while carrying the weight of family expectations. The relationship between them is marked by silences and glances that speak louder than words. As Mary watches Jake grapple with his insecurities, she realizes that her own life could still have a significant impact even in her final days. She decides that if she has the chance to make one last great contribution, she will take it. In a moment of clarity, she shares with Jake a story she has never told before, about a dream she had when she was young, a dream of change and transformation. The main challenge arises when Mary discovers that her health is deteriorating rapidly, and she must fight to remain present long enough to impart her lessons. Jake, in turn, finds himself at a crossroads. He can allow himself to be consumed by the pain of impending loss or find new strength through his grandmother's teachings. Their connection deepens as Mary becomes not just a grandmother, but a mentor guiding Jake through his own doubts and fears. The emotional journey of both characters is filled with moments of reflection and discovery. Mary, on her deathbed, reveals to Jake the importance of cherishing each moment and the strength found in vulnerability. And so, as the final breath approaches, each shared word becomes a gift, transforming pain into love and uncertainty into hope. In the end, the true beauty of life and death is revealed in the lessons that remain even after departure. As the morning sun filtered through the curtains of Mary's modest home, Jake sat at his grandmother's bedside, battling his own insecurities. Mary's frailty was palpable, but there was a silent strength in the way she looked at him. Time was running out, and Jake felt it deep within his being. He wanted to hear more stories, he wanted to learn, but the thought of losing his grandmother left him paralyzed. Mary, sensing her grandson's hesitation, decided she could not let fear come between them. In an effort to calm Jake, she began sharing memories of her youth when she dreamed of being an artist and transforming the world through her art. "Life had never been easy, Jake," she said with a sad smile, "but every difficulty I faced taught me something valuable. We must not let challenges bring us down, we must learn from them." Jake's eyes lit up for a brief moment, but soon the shadow of doubt returned. He was mired in his own concerns about the future. What did he really want? What should he do with his life? Family expectations weighed heavily on his shoulders, and the pressure to succeed left him exhausted. He wanted to be a good grandson, but he also needed to find his own path. As Mary recounted her stories, the memories began to transform into life lessons. She spoke of dreams that never materialized and disappointments faced along the way. "There were moments when I thought about giving up, Jake. But it was precisely in those moments that I realized life is made up of fresh starts. Every failure is an opportunity to learn something new," she said, her voice wavering slightly. However, Mary's health was deteriorating faster than she had anticipated. Doctor visits became frequent, and a sense of urgency began to loom over them. What could have been a simple learning experience was turning into a race against time. Jake felt the weight of growing responsibility as his grandmother began to worry about what she would leave behind. She didn't want her story to fade, and the idea of not having enough time to share everything she knew weighed heavily on her heart. During one of those doctor visits, reality hit hard. The diagnosis was not good, and Mary was informed that her time was running out. Jake, who had accompanied her, felt a wave of despair. The doctor's words echoed in his mind, and the thought of losing Mary became a shadow that followed him. He left the office feeling lost and helpless. As the days passed, Mary's fragile health became more evident. She needed constant care, and Jake felt his world crumbling. The pressure intensified. He wanted to be a good grandson, but he didn't know how to cope with the pain of watching her fade. He began to withdraw, struggling to find a balance between caring for her and dealing with his own emotions. This internal battle left him increasingly isolated. Meanwhile, Mary, even in her condition, began to notice the change in Jake's behavior. She realized he was shutting down, and that worried her. With a heavy heart, she decided they could not allow themselves to drift apart during this critical moment. In a moment of clarity, Mary called Jake to talk. "You don't have to carry this burden alone, dear. I'm here for you. Let's face this together," she said, holding his hand tenderly. The days that followed were filled with emotional moments. Jake began to open his heart, sharing his worries about the future, his failures, and the pressure he felt to succeed. Mary listened attentively, providing a safe space for him to express himself. "Sometimes, we need to fail to find out what we really want," she said, prompting Jake to reflect on his choices. The connection between them grew stronger, but new obstacles arose. Mary's health continued to deteriorate, and the idea of an inevitable farewell loomed over them like a dark cloud. Each day, Jake fought against the fear of loss, questioning his own ability to move forward without his grandmother. He started to wonder if he could honor her legacy, if he would truly learn the lessons she was trying to impart. As the situation became increasingly delicate, the outside world also seemed to pressure Jake. Friendships began to wear thin, and the pressure to excel in college and his career left him overwhelmed. He felt increasingly trapped in a cycle of expectations and frustrations, while the meaningful conversations with Mary served as a reminder of what truly mattered. Even in her final days, Mary continued to offer words of wisdom. "Don't let fear dictate your life, Jake. Life is made up of choices, and even though they are difficult, we always have the chance to start over," she would say, trying to remain present for him. And so, amidst teachings and farewells, both began to understand that true strength lay in vulnerability and the capacity to love, even in the face of pain. Days passed, and Mary's fragility became increasingly evident. Jake felt a weight in his heart, a mix of love and despair, as he watched his grandmother struggle with each breath. The house, once a refuge of laughter and stories, was now immersed in a heavy atmosphere of anxiety and sadness. He knew time was running out, and the fear of losing Mary paralyzed him. One morning, as Jake tried to prepare a simple breakfast, he heard a weak moan coming from the bedroom. His heart raced, and he rushed to see what had happened. Mary was sitting on the bed, her eyes filled with pain and confusion. "Jake, I don't know if I can do this anymore," she whispered, the words coming out as a thread of voice. The scene unfolding before him was devastating. The young man, who had always seen his grandmother as a force of nature, now saw her vulnerable and fragile. In that moment, Jake felt a wave of despair. A sense of helplessness enveloped him, and he recalled the conversations they had, the lessons she had tried to teach him. He had gotten lost in his worries, in his struggle to be someone, and now he felt he had neglected what truly mattered. He approached her, held her hand, and with tears in his eyes, said, "Please don't leave me, Mary. I still need you." Mary looked at him, and in her gaze was a depth of love and understanding. "Jake, my dear, life is made up of cycles. I will always be with you, even if I am not physically here. You need to live. Don't let fear prevent you from moving forward," she said, her voice soft yet firm. The young man felt a lump form in his throat. He knew that those could be some of the last words he would hear from his grandmother. What seemed to be a moment of despair turned into a revelation. Jake realized he had been so focused on his own insecurities that he had not given due importance to the life lessons Mary was trying to pass on. He was so worried about losing his grandmother that he forgot to live fully, to cherish every moment they still had together. With a heavy heart but determined, Jake decided he could not let the pain of loss consume him. He knew he needed to be strong, not just for himself, but also for Mary. From that day on, he committed to listening more, to learning from every word she said, and to valuing the time they still had. He began to jot down the stories Mary told, not just as a record but as a way to keep her essence alive. The emotional impact was profound. Jake began to reflect on his choices, his anxieties, and what it truly meant to be successful. He realized he had lost himself in a world of expectations, forgetting that true happiness came from simple and meaningful moments. Mary's presence taught him that success was not just about external achievements, but about the connections we build and the lessons we learn along the way. However, Mary's health continued to deteriorate rapidly. One night, as Jake reviewed his notes, he received a call from the doctor. His heart raced upon hearing that a new treatment might be an option, but it needed to be decided quickly. Jake knew this could be their last chance, but at the same time, there was a deep fear that his grandmother might not be able to endure it any longer. He remained silent, struggling against pride and hope. When he returned home, he found Mary sitting on the porch, watching the sunset. He joined her, and together they sat in silence for a while. Finally, Jake gathered the courage to talk about the new treatment, his hopes and fears. Mary listened attentively, then smiled. "If you think this can help me, then let's try. But above all, I want you to know that no matter what happens, I will always be with you. The love we share will never go away." In that moment, Jake realized that true strength was not in avoiding pain, but in facing challenges together. He decided that regardless of the outcome, he would honor Mary's life and lessons by living with more courage and authenticity. The future was still uncertain, but now he felt a little more prepared to face it. He was certain that, even without his grandmother's physical presence, her lessons and love would always guide him. Jake watched the sunlight slowly fading on the horizon, the gentle breeze tousling Mary's gray hair. The conversation about the treatment had brought a new breath of hope, but also a weight in his heart. He felt he was at a turning point, where his fears and insecurities intertwined with the determination not to give up. In the following days, he dedicated himself to learning more about the treatment and the available options. This was not just a task to save his grandmother, it was a way to confront his own fears. He realized that for a long time, he had allowed himself to be dominated by the fear of loss, letting it paralyze him. Now, he understood that he needed to act, not just for Mary, but also for himself. Conversations with her became more meaningful. Jake began to open up about his own doubts, the dreams he hadn't followed, and the pressure he felt to be someone successful. Mary, with her calm wisdom, always reminded him that true success was not in material possessions, but in living with purpose and love. He began to understand that the lessons she taught him were more valuable than any prize or recognition he could receive. With each passing day, Jake felt stronger. He started to take care of himself and seek support from friends he had previously avoided. The friendship of colleagues who offered to help him during this uncertain time proved to be an unexpected source of comfort. Together, they created a safe space where they could share their struggles and victories. This new support network helped Jake recognize that he didn't have to face everything alone. As Mary's health fluctuated, Jake decided he wouldn't let the fear of loss consume him. He learned to cherish each moment, not just with his grandmother, but in all areas of his life. The small joys, like laughing together during a card game or listening to stories from the past, became the cornerstones of his new perspective. The personal transformation Jake experienced was profound. He began to see his failures not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. With each mistake he made, he remembered Mary's words, "Life is made of cycles." This inspired him to rise again whenever he fell, not to let difficulties bring him down. Over time, Jake began to apply these lessons in other areas of his life. He decided to pursue his dreams authentically, no longer driven solely by the quest for external approval, but by the desire to be true to himself. The wisdom he gained through adversity shaped not only his relationship with Mary, but also with the world around him. He realized that love and connection are what truly enrich life. This new understanding propelled him to live more fully, with gratitude for each day that passed. And even in the darkest moments, Jake knew there was a path ahead, illuminated by the life lessons his grandmother had left him. Jake was at a breaking point. After weeks of research and conversations, the reality of his grandmother's treatment had become clearer, but also more frightening. The news that Mary had not responded well to the medication hit him like a punch to the stomach. He sat beside her, his heart heavy, as she looked out the window, sunlight filtering through the leaves. "Jake," she began, her voice soft yet firm. "I don't want you to worry about me. You have to live your life." Those words cut him deeply. He wanted to scream, to say he couldn't imagine life without her. But instead, he found himself fighting back tears. The thought of losing Mary felt unbearable. He remembered all the laughter, the lessons, the simple moments that now seemed so precious. And in that instant, something ignited within him. With a deep sigh, Jake took Mary's hand. "I can't let you go without a fight. I want you to know that I will do everything I can to help you face this." She looked into his eyes, a glimmer of pride reflecting on her tired face. "And you are already fighting, my dear. By taking care of yourself, you are already helping me." In that moment, Jake realized that true strength didn't come from fighting against pain, but from accepting the love they shared. He didn't need to be strong just for her, he could be strong for himself, to honor the life they had together. This revelation made him feel lighter. He promised himself that he would face every challenge, not just as a worried grandson, but as a man learning to live fully, even in the face of uncertainty. From that day on, Jake began to plan for the future, not just for Mary, but for himself as well. He understood that regardless of what happened, the strength he had found would accompany him in every step of his journey. Jake reflected on the journey he had faced alongside Mary. He realized that the struggle against pain was not the only way to show love. By allowing himself to feel and accept uncertainty, he began to see life in a new light. Each moment with his grandmother became precious, and he learned to value not only the victories, but also the challenges that shaped his character. He didn't know what the future held, but the certainty that he had become someone stronger and filled with purpose comforted him. Jake understood that true success was not just about achieving goals, but about the deep connection he had with those he loved. Now, he was ready to face whatever came, aware that the lessons of life never truly end. He looked out the window, feeling the gentle breeze, and smiled, open to what tomorrow might bring. And you, have you ever gone through an experience that changed your life? Share your stories in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more content that touches the heart. Your interaction is essential for us to continue this journey together.